Hi cuties, it's time for the May stats. Who is excited? I read a ton of books. We have a lot to get through, so let's get through it. Yeah, I don't know, whatever. You know how the drill goes. We're gonna go over some quick reviews. I can talk English. Yeah, those were, solid. We're gonna go over our quick reviews, our stats, our haul for the month, and yeah, that's what's happening right here, right now. So if you like reviews, you like stats, or you like hauls, buckle up, buckaroonies. And let's start. We're gonna start off not great at all with one of the worst books I've ever had to read, but I'm so thankful I will never have to read it again because my TBR game was very mean and finally gave me the one book I was dreading above all other books, and that is Moby freaking Dick. I hate Moby Dick. Moby Dick can suck my dick. I hate it. Actually, okay, I will say, I hated it less than I thought I was going to. I didn't realize how gay this book was. I loved that Ishmael and Quick Whip are like definitely lovers on this, like it is in the pages. They sleep in the same bed. They love to tangle their legs with one another. And he talks about how they're basically married. So points to Herman here for gay rep, but the rest of the book sucked. Speaking more gay, I feel like did I read a lot of queer books this month? We had a few. We had a good selection of some queer, at least if not main characters, a lot of queer side characters. So, you know, not too bad. We read The Scum Villain Self-Saving System by Mo Shang Tongshi. And this is one of the 3 different series that has suddenly just like taken the world by storm. I think Heaven's Official Blessing is like the big one. I don't hear a lot of people talking about Scum Villain Self-Saving System all that much, but I started with this one because that's what the game did. I ended up liking this, I gave it a 3.5. Definitely like this is going to be very much a slow burn. I was very confused. I thought the translation alone was not great. It read like a fan sub of people who like kind of speak one or the language or the other and enough of the other to kind of get it, but it didn't translate well into just like a smooth English to make it make sense. Like you have to have background knowledge of like Danmei or at least any kind of Chinese culture because it does not explain certain things. Like I've never read a cultivation novel in my life, so I spent a lot of this a little bit confused until I like went on the internet like, what the heck is cultivation novels and stuff. So that was a little bit difficult. So I don't think this was translated well for just the broad American audience who've never experienced it before. If you have experienced it before, I'm sure your enjoyment is a lot more. The comedy in this is pretty funny. I still don't quite understand. Like, I wish we had gotten a little bit of his backstory because it is about a character who is like, he dies in the real world and wakes up in his favorite like online novel, and it's a stallion novel where like the bad main character guy is like, he's got a harem and he's just all powerful, very Mary Sue-ish kind of character, and he gets thrown into this as a villain who like is the catalyst for the protagonist's like big power resurgence and kind of evil doing almost. But he changes the game. Now the game kind of, it's not a game, that's the weird thing, is like there's like an AI thing that's talking back and notifying him about points. So even though it's like a novel, there's still a point system. So I was just kind of confused on the world building of that. It was still very enjoyable regardless, but I thought that was very funny in his snarky commentary, and then the slow shift into, instead of him being interested in women, he's interested in his teacher, which is a little weird. I've never confirmed the age difference between these guys. Now, granted, I do think this character is somewhat immortal based on cultivation stuff. I'm not sure, but I was a little weirded out by that factor. I'm always weirded out by age gaps, and especially in teacher-student kind of stuff. But there's a lot of time jumping that will happen. There's no confirmation, and we don't know his backstory, like the actual character who dies. We just know that he has died and woken up. Like, you start immediately in that. You don't see any backstory of like how he died, for one, who he was in his previous life, none of that. So I don't really care for all of the female portrayals. I didn't think they were particularly well crafted. Now granted, it's a little bit more on the satire side of things, where the women are all meant to fawn over the protagonist because that's how a stallion novel works. But I wish it would have like broken a few of those tropes more so than it did. There was maybe like one female character who was kind of her own badassness, but would have liked to see a lot more bending of the tropes, breaking of the tropes, to fully encapsulate my enjoyment of the story. It is very slow, like nothing actually happens between them. There's like hints to things that like their feelings are kind of like growing for one another, but there's nothing actually happens in this one, so I do think this is it's gonna take a while for anything to come to pass, but it's definitely leading in that direction. I do want to continue reading this, even though I gave this only a 3.5, but again, it's my first introduction to this kind of craft, this kind of novelization of stuff, so would be interested in definitely getting my hands on the second one, but I don't have the second one because I am poor. Tattered Cover only had the first one of all three of these, so no sequels in Tattered Cover. Quite a shame. Gonna have to go online. I think the only place I've been able to find it is Amazon, so. Wah, wah. Next up, a very important book, but I only gave this 3 stars, and that is Schindler's List. Now, it's a 5-star for the experiences, for the knowledge, for the opening up about what was going on, for the nonfiction side of this. It is a 3-star for the prose. It is dry. It is really hard to pay attention to. It's just narrative-wise, in like, not narrative-wise, but like, because it's nonfiction, but the means of storytelling of this event and all the events around it, it just was not there. It was very hard to pay attention to. It was very hard to kind of grasp because there was a lot of anecdotes that led into one, into another, into another. So it didn't feel very organized. But from the parts that I was able to glean from it, you know, very important stuff, obviously. But I'm gonna have to give this only 3 stars as a book, as for the writing alone. Movie's great. Definitely, movie is amazing. I did like seeing, I mean, I love watching the movie. I think the movie is fantastic. And I do think the movie did a better job narrative-wise, but there were scenes in here I was like, oh, it's that scene, and so you got a little bit more backstory into that. The movie definitely glosses over Schindler himself. You know, he's a cheater and stuff. Like, he's not a great guy, but movies, biopics will do that to kind of amplify their heroes. They'll gloss over any kind of negative traits. But I wish they didn't do that, just because, you know, that just makes him more human, to understand that he's, like, Schindler wasn't all perfect. Like, he wasn't 100% a good guy, but he did a really good thing. So it just kind of humanizes him a bit more to include that when people are doing films, but filmmakers don't like to do that. Next up, we've got to a 4-star, and that is Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. So this is a collection of interpretations of Norse myths. So it was kind of nonfiction, but also not, because it's mythology and it's Neil's interpretation of those myths. I did enjoy them. I thought they were very fun, especially now that a lot of my reading, I have read a few more other like feminist retellings. Like, I read The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. So seeing some things that happen with that and then appear in here, I was like, ah, haha, I know that character. And aha, you know, it's just a nice connection to get more into, because I don't know Norse mythology all that well. That's not my mythology base that I am really aware of. Like, I know Japanese mythology very well. I know Greek mythology pretty decent, but Norse has never been one that I have been able to fully immerse myself into. So I think this is a good stepping stone into it. Not everybody likes Neil Gaiman's writing style, and some of it, I would say, like, because it's an anthology, it's like, it's a hit or miss thing. Anthologies always are that way with me. Some stories I like, some stories I don't. For the most part, I enjoyed a lot of the stories here. The audiobook is read by Neil, and Neil always has a great audiobook voice, so appreciate. Next up, we finished a duology. I was really trying to finish and continue series this month, and that's really what I've been gung-ho about for the past month or so. We finished the duology of the final 6 with The Life Below by Alexandra Monir. I did give this 4 stars. I did like this. I loved how we ended up everybody back together. I didn't love some of the deaths that happened in this. I did love some of the other deaths that happened in this. I wanted more though, so I'm taking away a star because I do think this was way too short. And the ending left it a little open so that we might go back to this world at some point. Maybe not with these characters, but with a younger sibling of one of the characters, and I would definitely like to see that. So I don't know if there are any plans in the works for it, but I thought it was a fun duology, especially if you're into like space and, you know, competitions to get on this space mission and first contact kind of stuff. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. It definitely has its flaws, but I do think I like the final 6 more than The Life Below, but by a small amount. But overall, very fun time. Don't regret it. Ta-da! Next up, and then we started a new series, but you know, the TBR game made to do us. I thought going in that this was going to be more of a sci-fi dystopia kind of thing. It's a little bit. It's on that bridge of sci-fi and fantasy, but leaning more into the fantasy side of things. And that is The Other Side of the Sky by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. Very interesting concepts. Again, I gave this one 4 stars. I owned Beyond the End of the World. Is it Beyond the End of the World? Is that the title? No, it's on the shelf now. I don't know where it is. Very, very interesting because we have kind of a almost solar punk aspect of the cities in the sky, which is where this dude is from, and he likes to like race and explore, and there's some issues with their engines failing, and so they're losing altitude. And then she is the goddess on Earth, and these civilizations have been separated for a really long time, but her people don't really necessarily believe that she is the goddess anymore, that she is divinity. There are some big secrets that are revealed. There's a magic system that's pretty interesting. And a cat. Don't know how to fully describe this because it was very different in terms of genre. Like it was very hard to place this genre for me because it's kind of borderline sci-fi and fantasy, and the bit of romance and some big stuff. And I'm very nervous about the sequel based on the final chapter of this baby. Like, if there's a huge cliffhanger, okay guys, big cliffhanger, fair warning for that. So if you're not a cliffhanger person, get both books at the same time. Don't let it sit, because if you can't handle a cliffhanger, it's gonna drive you insane, okay? A little bit okay with it, but it's definitely like shot up on priority to finish, but I enjoyed it. Oh, okay, the first 5-star of the month. We actually had quite a few 5 stars. I think we have the 5. We had 5 stars this month. And I'm absolutely obsessed with this book. Right now, my brain keeps going back to it. I keep rereading scenes, but that is The Undertaking of Hart and Mercy by Megan Bannon. I have tabbed. This is a Fairy Loot edition. I think I have talked about it. I did talk about it in the other tag video, but I am absolutely in love with this. This is very much like a Ghibli for adults. It's got a bit of that kind of never-ending story vibe to it as well, I want to say, based on some of the creatures. I adored it. I absolutely adored this book. It's fantastic. It's so fun. I love the world building. I love all of the characters in this. I loved just the romance alone was great. Even though it had like some pretty steamy, spicy scenes, which are not my favorite. I love that they didn't drag on forever and ever though. But you still got like good emotion and like relationship building between them, more than just we're gonna, you know, have sex now. That's what I don't like, is when it's just pointless. There was a lot of point to it. There was a lot of growth to characters on both sides. There was some really good mystery in this. I loved the kind of spirit zombie-ish kind of aspect that we also had in this story. Just everything was great. Everything was fantastic, and I loved it. Read this book. Don't sleep on it. I feel like this book is very underhyped, and I think it needs a lot more hype, especially with like the TikTok girlies. Like, you love your romantasy stuff. Get on this. This would be like, I would respect a lot more of the romantic-y side of TikTok if they were talking about books like this instead of ACOTAR. So, next up, we read a contemporary romance, and that is Field Notes on Love by Jennifer E. Smith. This was cute. I do think it is way too short, however. I gave this one also a 4-star. It is about these two people who go on a train ride across America together because our main guy here, who is actually the youngest of sextuplets? I forget if it's, I think it's 6. Is he sextuplets? It didn't say in the synopsis, so that was a surprising, fun little thing. His girlfriend breaks up with him, so he searches online for another person by the same name because the tickets are non-transferable and they were under his girlfriend's name. And so he finds this, well, first he finds an old lady to go with, and then the old lady has to go get bunion surgery. That was just so funny. And so he ends up going with May over here, who is trying, you know, she's a little bit of a lost soul. She wants to be a filmmaker, and she's just had a bunch of disappointments happen to her in her you know, journey to getting to university, where she wants to go study film, but she didn't get into the program. She got into the university, and she's just a little bit depressed about it and trying to film stuff along the way. They form a great friendship. They form a little fun romance, but it needs to be longer. This needed to develop a lot more, especially for the end of it. I just wanted more. I wanted more exploration. I wanted to know what went on with her when she got to university and her side of stuff there. I wanted to know what exactly his plan is, because all of his siblings band together to let him kind of like live his own life, because they've always been like a packaged deal no matter what, and that was coming to terms for them for college. But I do think it's very cute. It's a very fast read. If you need a cute fast read just for some warm fuzzies, go for that one. Next up is a 3.5. I am not sure if I'm going to continue this series or not, but that is Sisters of the Snake by Serena and Sasha Nanua. They are a sister writing duo, and it is about sisters who are separated at birth. One is a princess, one is a thief, and they swap places. We have a prince and the pauper situation going on. It's fairly predictable. In general, I did still enjoy a lot of it. I did enjoy the world building part of this. I enjoyed the magic system, and I enjoyed a lot of the characters themselves. However, it was so predictable. I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't fully decided if I will get the sequel, because I do believe it is just a duology. I believe it, is it Defend? It's not, Defend the Dawn is a Bridget Kemmerer, but it's something like that. Dawn of the, I don't know. I forget the sequel. I don't know. I'm on the fence about this one because it was fun, but I don't know if it had enough of an impact on me to want to continue to the sequel. And that's really all I have to say about it. Back into 5-star land, we completed a duology, and that is Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. I love this. I loved Ari and Dante. I think I only gave the first book like 4 stars. It was fine. I enjoyed it. That was more of a like discovery of sexuality in Bond in terms of friendship. That's a true friends to lovers kind of story, and now we are in a relationship. There's a lot of other stuff going on with them. You know, they're both getting ready for college. They're both trying to decide, you know, where their relationship is going, you know, and it was very real. That's the thing about Benjamin Alir Sains. I didn't actually say the name of the author, sorry. Benjamin Alir Sains. He does this amazing job, not only with just writing absolutely gorgeous prose, but making, like, even though you're rooting for them the whole time, if things don't go the way you want them to, they're still very understandable why. It's not a dumb, like, miscommunication situation. It's nothing like that, where it's just there for the plot device. It makes sense. It feels very real world. You just really bond with all of these characters, and I loved it. I thought this was an absolutely great conclusion to their story. Granted, would I love another one? I would read about Ari and Dante forever, to be honest. Now, it took like 7 years. No. It took over a decade. Because I think I said the wrong thing the last time I talked about it. I think Ari and Dante came out in like 2011, and this book just came out last year. So it took over a decade for us to get a sequel. big stuff. I would read about them forever though. I love them. I love the writing. I don't even mind that Lin-Manuel Miranda is the audiobook narrator. I'm not hating on Lin-Manuel Miranda. I just think that man is overhyped. Love him. Think he's a genius. But it's weird when you're like, you know him for more music and stuff, and then he's narrating an audiobook. But he does a really great job at it. So no shade. It's just, anytime you get a celebrity reading an audiobook, I'm always a teensy-weensy bit hesitant, just in general. I read the Black Cat series by Holly Black, and who was that Jesse Eisenberg or somebody who did that? No, I did not like that. Did not like that one. Another 5-star. It's an immediate. We got it. We read it. We met her. Sort of. We saw her. We didn't get to like physically meet her. But that is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. You've probably already heard me gush about this. I freaking love this book! Ah! You want to learn anything about publishing or writing? Read this book. Read this book. It is unhinged and weird and great, and I love it. And you read it, you can't take your eyes off of it. You can't get enough of June just spiraling into her descent of hell and what are you doing? But also, she makes some good points. There are some good points. So that, and then the character that is being kind of betrayed and is dead. Also, not a perfect human. Again, R.F. Kuang, great job making flawed characters, make good points, but also what are you doing? It is also a very fast read. Oh my God. Don't sleep on it. Don't sleep on Yellowface, guys. Read it. Right now, go read it. Click off the video and go read it. All right, we have to talk about a book that I did not enjoy. And here's the thing. A lot of people really loved the first book. I was not a huge fan of the first book. I thought it was very Mary Sue. And I don't mean to like neg on the Mary Sue label, but it was pretty textbook of what a Mary Sue is. There was very little development in characters in that first book, I thought. And I did not entirely enjoy it, but I enjoyed it enough to read the sequel. I regret that decision. So that is Heart of the Sun Warrior by Sue Lin Tan. This is one of those, they get you on that cover. It's beautiful, but mistakes were made. Several mistakes were made in this. I gave it 2.5. I just really don't like that we spent the whole first book really developing a romance with a character, and it is thrown out the window. Absolutely thrown out the window. And I think she makes the wrong choice. And even for those who do ship the other side of this stupid love triangle, and I know people will say love arrow, I'm saying love triangle because it's just easier. It makes more sense to me. There was no satisfaction in that ending either. A lot of the stuff, again, this main character, everything just happens so easily for her. Everything is so conveniently done. In the first book, she conveniently gets a spot as a servant and just happens to know how to be a servant, even though she's only lived isolated on the moon. She easily gets into studying with the prince and just happens to be really good at archery and stuff and learns super fast and becomes one of the top like warriors in a span of nothing. And that's where I did not believe that main character. It's so convenient. There is no struggle for her. Even though it's narratively, it's saying there's a struggle, but it's like telling us there's a struggle when we don't see any of that. All the men just fall in love with her, you know. So I'm disappointed. I am majorly disappointed. I'm disappointed in how that ended. There is going to be like a compilation anthology of stories. I have no intention of reading them because I'm just mad. I'm just mad in general about it. Ugh. The next book I thought was going to be a duology. It's not. It's a trilogy. So this is the second book in a series, but the next book doesn't come out till next year, and that is These Infinite Threads by Tahereh Mafi. I love Tahereh Mafi's work so much. I really loved the first book in this. I loved the world building. I loved the magic system. I loved the characters. I forgot a bit of it going into this, but she does a really good job reminding people what happened. Now, this is another situation though, however, that is becoming very similar to this in that we end up sort of with this bit of a love triangle, and I'm worried that the girl's gonna choose wrong. I'm a little worried about how this is going to end up. It could go either way. Am I necessarily mad if it goes where this book insinuates it might be going? Not entirely, because they are very well-crafted characters. So if there is a shift in the initial setup of, like, when you pick up a book, you can kind of immediately predict who, you know, who Endgame is. But if we're shifting that Endgame, I'm not entirely mad about it in this one like I was in that one. That's because those characters are not well crafted, in my opinion. They're better crafted here. I get it more. So, we like 4 stars. Cool. Next up, we finished a trilogy and I'm really happy with it for the most part. It had me super scared for a lot of it, but that is A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. I do love this trilogy. I think it's super fun. I do think Delilah gets a lot of hate, unnecessary hate. I see every time I talk about this series, I get a lot of people who say that that Delilah Bard is a Mary Sue or she's a pick-me girl, and I'm like, I disagree. I do think she's a badass, but I don't necessarily see her as being a pick-me girl or a Mary Sue necessarily. I do think she does have a lot of power that I think was well hinted at and I think is deserved. Like, I don't think she magically is just an amazing, like, well, I don't want to spoil what she is, but I do think there was a build-up to her doing that, and it is made known that, yeah, she has a lot of power, but she don't got a lot of control, and she doesn't have a lot of discipline. So I do think that's made known here. I do love how we have, how you kind of, it does almost a little bit of a Zuko with a villain. We get a little bit of that thing. I love when stories do that, when you have this villain and then that villain becomes kind of that friend. And I do enjoy that aspect of this. And of course, my boy Alucard Emery. Love him! He's my favorite. He's my favorite. And I just love them. I love them a lot. I think they're great. I loved the one thing, because this is why this did not get a 5-star, is there were a ton more POVs inserted into this that I don't think needed to be in here. I don't think it necessarily had to be this long of a book, but again, I'm not mad about it. It did all the important people that I wanted, and then it just had some extra people that I'm like, wait, who? The one thing I'll say is don't read this on audiobook if you're a Brandon Sanderson fan, specifically if you are a Stormlight Archives fan, because it's the same 2 narrators. It's Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, and there's like in Stormlight, there's a character named Alucard, and there's a character named Alucard, and so hearing their voices, having read the entirety of Stormlight via audiobook, I kept forgetting that I was not in Stormlight while reading this. So physically read this, or if you haven't read Stormlight, then go ahead and read this. Just, it's gonna get confusing if you're like me, because it got confusing for me. But I thoroughly enjoy this. I'm very excited for the extension of this universe with V.E. Schwab's new book, Fragile Threads of Power, which comes out later this year, in the fall, I think. So I'm hoping that's gonna be a fairy loot. That's why I haven't pre-ordered it, because I'm like, it might be a fairy loot. Oh no! But I am excited for that. Also, this book has great floppability. Just floppability score, 10 out of 10. Next up, not as great floppability in this one. This is a little bit stiffer, but that's because it is an Amazon paperback. This is an indie book. It is, I think, a winner of SPIFBO. But that is A Touch of Light by Thiago Abdallah. I wish I liked this more. I was really super hyped about this because the people that recommended it to me said it was amazing. And I disagree. I don't think it was horrible. I only gave it a 3. I think it was kind of mediocre. There were 3 POVs. I liked one POV above all the others. And I think if we had just written the book from that perspective, I would have absolutely fawned over this. There are 2 female POVs and 1 male POV. The male POV, I forget his name, what's this? Adrian. I don't care about Adrian at all. We have a fridging situation for Adrian's motivation. We barely meet his fiance in the beginning, and then the next chapter she's already dead, and that's his motivation for everything, just to bring her back to life. And we do not get sufficient what's the word, conclusion? Not conclusion, but something even worse happens with that I thought was a really cheap move, and I didn't appreciate it. Lynn, it took me a while to care about Lynn. She's kind of this rogue sentinel warrior character. I still don't quite know what they do exactly or how they function, but I did find her story more compelling than Adrian. And then Nasha. I loved Nasha's character. I was super into Nasha's story. She's kind of in this, I don't want to say primitive culture, but she's a sloper, but she's trying to be part of the roots. It's this very interesting culture that she's in. It's very opposite of where we have Adrian and Lynn, and it's very unique. And I was super into that. I was super into what her magic was going to be, because her magic she considers a curse. She's like a hyper empath, but it develops into something a little bit stranger, which by the end you're like, okay, I get the connection now. But if this was just Nasha's story, I would have absolutely loved this book, but because it got dragged down by Adrian's plot mostly, and I just did not care about his stuff. I was also promised griffins, and the griffins are barely in this. So I was really upset about that, because you know me, I love a non-human sidekick character, but the griffins are barely anything, that to the point where I don't even think we needed griffins. They didn't really serve the plot at all. I don't know if I'm continuing with this or not. This is another one where I'm like, ugh. So if you've read the sequel, let me know. I think the sequel just came out or is coming out very soon, but I was disappointed. I was unfortunately very disappointed with that. Next up, we continued another series. We're just reading a lot of really fast books, but I wanted to continue this. I'm kind of getting obsessed with this series right now. Surprisingly, because of the age gap thing here, this is Lore Olympus Volume 2. Now, I gave this 4 stars. I've also already read Volume 3, and Volume 4 just arrived at my doorstep. So I do like this because I love a good Persephone and Hades retelling. The one thing in this is that it does emphasize the age difference between them. However, if you know me, my one pass for age gaps is immortality stuff. And the fact, while Persephone is young, she is an immortal. So I'm less weirded out by that, also because it's based on mythology that we already know about, and because our main guy, Hades, is like trying to not, and he is being a good boy. He's not forcing anything on her. He's not being fucking Apollo. Fuck Apollo, man. So I am more comfortable with their love story than any other, well, no, not any other age gap romance I've read, because I've read Well Matched, and that's an age gap romance that I'm super okay with. But it's got to be done right, and I do think Rachel Smythe is doing it right with this. Again, it gets a pass because of the immortality thing. I do tend to let it pass when it's that. So anyway, I am enjoying this. I do think, because I did just read Volume 3, I liked Volume 3 more than this volume, but I'm hoping I will like Volume 4 even more. And then Volume 5 comes out, but not till later this year, and I'm like, oh, am I gonna finally break and read webcomics? Because I'm really bad about it. So, but I do like this. I do love the art style. I think it's very interesting. I love the color coding of people in this. But yeah, I love me likey. Next up, we have Anne of Manhattan by Brina Starler. I like this. It's on Anne of Green Gables retelling, obviously. I was hesitant about this. I did give it 4 stars. However, there's some things in this that I'm like, I don't quite believe. I did not believe the modern interpretation of Diana Barry. I didn't believe that as Diana. Everything that Diana did felt fairly out of character for her, based on who she was as a character in the beginning of the book. At the end of the book, I did believe more so of her, but some of the things that Diana does, I'm like, that does not seem very Diana Barry. Did like that we progressed back into friendship with Anne and Gilbert fairly quickly in this, because they are grown up. I liked sometimes we went back in time and kind of experienced them growing up. There were a few instances where I'm like, I don't think that scene was actually necessary, especially near the end of the book. The end of the book's big culmination of stuff, I thought it dragged a little bit. Because if you know the original Anne story, the way that Anne and Gilbert kind of get together is Anne has this revelation, because Gilbert's been in love with her forever, right? Anne has this revelation once Gilbert gets horribly ill with, I believe with scarlet fever in the original. So Gilbert always has to kind of like go into this injury situation. And I liked what they did with it. I just think that like, Anne, why are you sleeping on going? So once she finds out, she doesn't move, and that's contrary to what happens in the original material, where Anne's like, oh my god, what? And immediately is like at his bedside. She doesn't do that here. She does eventually go and see him, but I was like, we're dragging on that reunion thing, so you don't necessarily get to really savor the happy ending in this, which is what I was like, and I took away a star for it. But overall, I thought it was fun, a fun interpretation. It was much more steamy than I thought it was going to be, like, damn. So if you're looking for steamy, if you're a steamy girl, if you're you know, on that side of booktube and TikTok and stuff, you'll probably like this more than me. I didn't hate it, but I was like, whoa there, my Anne girl. That was just, you know, it's a modern retelling, so I get it. You know, Anne and Gilbert have like 7 children together. I get it. We have a brand new release, and that is The Crane Husband by Kelly Barnhill. This is my first foray into Kelly Barnhill. She's been on my TBR for a while. I really want a bunch of other books, and I really enjoyed this. This is a novella. It is kind of magical realism. It deals with, you know, abuse and stuff. I gave this 4.5 because short. I don't like short. I like big books, and I thought this could have gone on a lot more. If you know the myth of the crane wife, then you probably know about this. It is gender swapped, with it obviously being the crane husband, and I thought that was a very interesting interpretation of this. I love the writing style in this. It is very beautiful prose. It is very heartbreaking. It is, especially with between the older sister and her younger brother, because it's from the older sister's point of view. And I wished we had done something better with the younger brother by the end of this. That's where I took a half star away, is I felt really, really bad for the main character in this and how the story between her and her sibling kind of ended up. But highly recommend. Great. Also a very quick read. Read it. Cool. Next up is another 5-star, and don't be surprised, it's Kendra Merritt. This is the 3rd book in the Mark of the Least series, Catching Cinders, and it might, don't quote me yet, I gotta think about this a while, it might be my new favorite. I love By Wing a Chair, don't get me wrong. By Wing a Chair has been the current favorite, but I might like this a little bit more, just a smidge more. Maybe. I haven't decided yet. I have to go through and tab this one. I haven't tabbed it yet, but having read it in like a day, I am definitely going to need to go back and do some tabby work. And I think whoever ends up with the most tabs is the winner. We'll see. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm not a Cinderella girl. Like, that's not my favorite fairy tale. But, oh, and that's why I'm surprised, because Beauty and the Beast is one of my favorite ones, but Skin Deep is currently my least favorite. It's not terrible, it's just my least favorite of them. I still love Skin Deep, but I definitely like By Wing a Chair more than Skin Deep, and I definitely like this more than Skin Deep, but I don't know where I sit with this one and By Wing a Chair. If you need some good swoony romance, it's not steamy. That's why, honestly, one of the reasons I love this is we have a very wholesome romances between all these characters. Again, very believable things. We have a great non-human sidekick. Oh my god, I love it. I loved it. Cool. Didn't love. Here's one I didn't love, and I'm really disappointed because I got to pre-order this one. Well, I didn't pre-order it. My dad had to pre-order for me because he lost in our Christmas game. But that is Song of Silver Flame at Night by Amelie Wen Zhao. I've never read an Amelie Wen Zhao before. There was a dumb cover reason why I didn't read Blood Air, and now I don't think I will be reading any more Amelie Wen Zhao. I found this boring. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't like what it did. By the end of it, it was just a major disappointment. I didn't connect. It just left me wanting so much more out of this, and I just ended up being thoroughly disappointed. I can't even really say much about it because it didn't stick in my brain, for one, but what stuck in my brain is the emotions while reading it, and I remember reading it, listening, going a lot. So that's where we stand. Moving on to a better book, we have A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow, another novella. This is a Sleeping Beauty sort of retelling, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. I loved the comedy aspect in this a lot. I didn't expect as much comedy as we got, but it is a kind of portal fantasy where our main character, who is dying, she has a very severe illness, ends up in a Sleeping Beauty-like realm and saves Sleeping Beauty from getting married and stuff. It is a sapphic romance, and it's great. It's just fantastic, and I thoroughly enjoyed, well, it's not a sapphic romance for them, but there are a lot of sapphic characters in this. It's fantastic. I loved the ending of this, by the way. I thought that was one of the best options for an ending that could have happened. So highly I recommend read this one. I'm very excited to read the sequel. A Mirror Masked, I think is the full title. I don't know if there's a third one coming out, but like I need a full series of all of these, and just this main character. I don't know if that follows the main character in the sequel or not, or if it's just like a companion, but if it does follow that character, I want her going through all the fairy tales and saving all the heroines. I want that. I want that so much. Read this. But next up, we read Driving by Starlight by Anat Darasin. This is a bomb book, so I almost had to get rid of this one. I'm glad that I got to read it, though. I did give this one 4 stars. I thought this was something completely different, but I'm not mad about it. If you like books like All My Rage or Persepolis, you will like this one. It deals with girls in Saudi Arabia and the oppression that they undergo and what they're trying to do to kind of undermine the situation and express themselves and live their lives and escape their fates. And I loved how this ended. This ending is so good. I took away 1 star though, because the character, there's a couple of boy characters in this, and the main boy, he's not the main boy, but he should have been like the main boy character. I wanted more interaction with him and our main character. I thought that would have built it a little bit better, because he's like a friend of the family's, and our main character's dad is in jail for being a rebel, and he's the son of a lawyer who is the friend of the father and the mom, and I think, and you know, they kind of grow up together, so I kind of would have liked to see a little bit more of that friendship between them, knowing that, you know, they've grown up together, they know each other pretty well, just a little bit more of that, and I think this would have been even more of a 5-star. Well, it's a 4-star, but it would have moved it up in the rankings. I did love the female friendships that we got. Most of all, that above all, that's what this story is about the female friendships and how the oppression kind of can divide women against each other. There is very much a pick-me girl in this one as well, and kind of gets her comeuppance. I loved the banding together in the end of this, like even with the breaking of a friendship and then a rebuilding of a friendship and then creating new friendships around that. It's if you love female friendships, you'll love this book. Then we moved on to just reading as much as I could on the last night. Actually, all 5 of these, from A Spindle Splintered to the last book that we're going to get through. I read 5 books in one day, basically, on the 31st, just trying to get through as much as I could. But we read The Grave by Dan Fraga. I have had this book on my shelf forever. It's kind of full-on comic strip graphic novel, which is very interesting. However, I did not fully enjoy this. I did give it 2.5. I didn't like the interpretation of a lot of, again, female characters. I thought it bounced a little weirdly. I would have liked a little bit more fluidity between everything, but it was fine. The art style is really interesting. I really didn't like also like this style of it, because you see the action in the picture and then it describes it like you're reading a book. And it's like, you don't necessarily need that when you're doing graphic novel format. So I just wasn't a huge fan of this format in general, but Finally read it. Owned it for forever. Read a book that was one of the best books of last year by many people's standards, and I totally get that why. And this is a full graphic novel. It's, I don't want to call it graphic novel. It's poetry with art, and it's beautiful. But that is Ain't Burned All the Bright by Jason Reynolds and Jason Griffin. And this story is beautiful. It is kind of like the story of being in COVID and depression and stuff. And it's a very, very, very quick read. It looks chunky, but it's because it's like one line per page. It's very fast. It's very impactful. It's very powerful. I highly recommend reading this book, guys. Don't sleep on it. Again, it's fantastic. And I've read other work by Jason Reynolds that I wasn't a huge fan of, but his poetry, I find, is more impactful than the stuff that I've read. I've only read one other book. No, I've read 2 books by him. Did he write the Spider-Man book I read? That was fine. But there's The Opposite of Always. Is that Jason Reynolds, or am I thinking it's somebody else? I didn't like The Opposite of Always. But anyway, I did like this a lot. The last book I read is another graphic novel that I have owned absolutely forever, and that is October Faction by Steve Niles and Damian Worm. His last name is Worm, for realsies. Okay, cool. This was fine. I gave it 3. It's fine. I don't think I'll keep it. Yeah. It's just fine. It's fine. I don't know. I know there's a Netflix series by it, but I wanted more. I just wanted more. From what I went into it thinking we were gonna get, it didn't do enough. It didn't do enough, and there's a fat villain. Fat female villain. And I don't like that. I don't like when we do that. I just don't. That is all the books that I read in May. Holy buckets, that was a lot. So, moving on. We have the stats. We need to talk about some stats. Okay, here's our lovely stats for the month. Again, we read 25 books, which is 3 more than last month. Good job, me. We read 9,514 pages and 164 hours listed. We read 2 indies, 3 own voices, and we started 6 new series. We continued 3 series and completed 4. I think that's my best month yet for completing of series. I've switched gears into that this year. And yeah, so that's pretty good. On average, we read 380 pages per day, 380 and a half pages per day. 380 pages per book, but 306.9, almost 307 pages per day. Hours, it was about 6.56 hour audiobooks. I read a lot of short audiobooks, so I gotta say. Except for Moby Dick. On average, I was reading a book every 2.6 days, and they were getting an average of 3.8, which is better than last month. I did read predominantly audiobooks. No one's surprised. The 1 month I read more physical than audio is going to be a shocker for everyone. We read 12 audiobooks, 7 paperbacks, and 6 hardcover. Oh, wait! Never mind. We did read more physical books this month. We read 13! Thanks graphic novels. No ebooks this month though, none at all. Wow, I finally did it. I beat audiobooks. And predominantly they were from Libby, with 9 books from the Libby app, 4 from Scribd, 1 was a special edition, and 1 was a first edition. What did I say was a first edition? I'm really bad about that, about doing this stuff. But anyway, mostly Libby and Scribd. We read 13 adult and 12 young adults, so almost an even split. In genres, again, fantasy romance, kicking it up with 11 fantasy romances. I think, who's the next one? Contemporary? Contemporary, literary, and contemporary romance. Both 3 of those, and then everybody else is kind of all scattered about. With ratings, we did have, again, the highest with 4. No surprise there. 9 books were 4 stars, but we did have, 5 5-star reads. So that's pretty rare for that to happen. But yeah, those are the biggest ones. Unfortunately, 2 2 stars, 2 2.5 stars, so not great. Not great. No 1 stars though, so that's nice. 18 of the books we read this month were novels. We read 4 graphic novels, 2 novellas, and 1 anthology. We did mostly new authors. We had 3 debuts, 11 new, and 11 repeats. For queer, we had a better distribution of queer characters and disabled characters. Disabilitied is what I was about to say. So we had 6 books with queer main characters, 5 with queer side characters, And then we had 10 books with disabled main characters, and that's it. Then we had a bunch that didn't include any, but overall, I think that's a better distribution than we've been reading. Mostly predominantly women writers with 8 male writers. Nobody else was included in that this month. With character genders, we had a lot of shared spaces, a lot of, you know, duo POVs for men and women, and then we had 6 just women and then 7 just men. With nationalities, again, a lot of American, but actually we had a lot more variance this month. So we had 18 Americans, 2 Chinese, 3 Australian, 1 British, 1 Canadian, 1 Brazilian, 1 New Zealand, or 2 New Zealand. 2 from New Zealand this month. Well done. With the settings, again, also some interesting distributions. We only had 11 in the US, 10 in fictional lands. We had 1 in India, Saudi Arabia, England, China, space, Norway, and Poland. So we had an interesting distribution this month. Where they were published out of, HarperCollins actually won this month with 7 HarperCollins, 4 from Penguin, 2 from Hachette, 2 from Simon & Schuster, we're getting in there, and 4 from Macmillan. 5 were small presses and 1 was Paper Mill Press. No self-pub, even though some of the self-pubs are technically small press, because like Kendra Merritt's press is called Blue Fire Press. But I consider that a small press rather than self-pub because that's how she labels it. Publication year. We did 4 brand new, 5 from 2022, 5 from 2021, 2 from 2020, and predominantly 7 from 2015 to 2019, and then 1 from 1990 to 1999, and 1 from the 1800s, Moby Dick. Acquisition-wise, a lot from this year and a lot from last year. 9 from last year alone, 7 from this year, 5 from 2021, 3 from 2020, and 1 from 2019. Where I got those books from, Book Outlet, always winning with 7, but Pango right on its heels with 6, only 1 from Second & Charles, 3 from Amazon, 1 from Barnes & Noble, and 3 from Tattered Cover. Good job, Tattered Cover. 1 of them was gifted, 1 was a Fairy Loot, 1 was an Owl Crate, 1 was at a convention, and that's those guys. So with our cost, total cost, this was actually cheaper by a little bit from last month with $289.96, making the books on average $11.59. Although technically it should be $60. We need to round that up. Hold on. Data, format, number. There we go. $11.60 per book. And those are the stats. Cool. Now we're going to move on over to the haul. Hello and welcome over to the haul side of things. How's everyone doing? Hope you're enjoying the very long video this probably is. Hey. I actually have a shorter haul this month because per Lena and the Easter egg hunt, I am on a book buying ban in May. And so I did acquire books. Most of them I got for free, or they were pre-orders, or they were the Fairy Loot subscription, which doesn't count in book buying bans. So I only have a small little stack. Let's get into it. A bunch of these I did get off for free from Pango because I sold a bunch of books and then got credit. So most of the beginning ones are from that, including a new release, Anna Maria and the Fox by Liana de la Rosa, which is like a historical romance but with Latinx characters. I'm excited. It looks very, very cute. And then if you remember my bookstore crawl where I could only find volumes 1 and 3 of Avatar the Promise, I did manage to find volume 2 so we can read all 3 and not have an issue. Again, thank you Pango, someone having it. Another free Pango was from a release at the very end of last year, and that is A Million to One by Adiba Jagirdar. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to properly pronounce that last name. This is a heist on the Titanic story. Very excited. Then we have a brand new release that I was super shocked to find on Pango that and it was only listed for $5. I got it for free because of my credits, but like, what? And that is The Crane Husband by Kelly Barnhill. And I might have already read this by the time this video comes out. But yeah, oh my gosh. Then we also have another one that I accidentally purchased the second book first, and that is The Star-Touched Queen by Roshni Chokshi. This is an older YA of hers, and I've heard some great things about it, but I purchased A Crown of Wishes at Second & Charles months ago, and then came home and went, oh, that's a book too. Whoops. But in an effort to continue series that I didn't have, and it was actually very hard to find hardcover copies of these books, because the one I have is a hardcover, but I only ever see paperbacks out there. But that is Spark by Alice Broadway, which is the second book in the Ink trilogy, where people have tattoos all over them and it tells the story, and yeah. We have the second one now. Then one of my Easter egg pre-orders came, and I'm so excited, but we have Atalanta by Jennifer Saint. This is the third Jennifer Saint book that I now own and will be reading. I've read her other ones of Ariadne and Electra. Oh my god, I was like, Clytemnestra. No, that's a different one. But Clytemnestra is in Electra. There's so many Greek retellings out there right now. But yes, Atalanta. The next two came from the same person on Pango, but I only technically purchased one, and they threw in a free ARC. And it's actually a booktuber. I didn't realize I was getting it from a booktuber, but it's Beautifully Bookish Bethany. And so I bought Empire of Ivory, which is the fourth book in Temeraire, because I've been trying to collect them so I can continue the series. And apparently she was doing a thing where if you bought a book, you got a random ARC for free, and so she sent me the first Bright Thing by J.R. Dawson, which is like sapphic mystery circus stuff. I hadn't heard of this at all, but it seems interesting. So we'll find out. Then my adult Fairy Loop subscription came for April, and that was In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune. I'm honestly not as impressed with this one. I like the original cover better than this. It doesn't suit it, I don't think. I mean, I love the sprayed edges look, but, and it's like, yeah, very cute, but I just don't, I'm not a huge fan of this, but of the design. I'm sure I will be a fan of the book because I do like T.J. Klune. The last free Pango purchase I got was The Unexpected Miss Bennet by Patrice Sarras. This is a Mary Bennet retelling because I'm a Mary Bennet stan, and I love reading retellings featuring other characters in Pride and Prejudice. I mean, I love any Pride and Prejudice retelling, but I get really into the side characters. But where's the Kitty Bennet? All right, I never see retellings or interpretations of Kitty's story. There's a lot of Marys out there, but no Kitties. Kitty is the forgotten child, more so than Mary now. Next one I got was a gift from Lena, because when there are books in Book of the Month that Lena doesn't want, she gives them to me. And I wasn't really 100% sure I wanted this, but we got it anyways, and that is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, which I also now realize is technically a sequel. It might be like a companion, but Abby Jimenez wrote Part of Your World, which I haven't read, but I've heard amazing things about. But now I have to get that before I can let myself read this. So that's fun. And lastly, you all probably know what's coming. I went to R.F. Kuang's meet and greet signing thing, and I got Yellowface, and I've already read this book. I read it immediately, and I loved it. 5 stars, highly recommend, go read this book. And that's it. That's the haul. Very short haul. Back to the rest of the video. All right. Thanks, Haul Q. And that is it for the stats of May. I am going to be doing dedicated reviews this month. You guys did vote on which books will have a dedicated review. At least one, well, because it all depends on my capabilities of filming. But definitely The Princess Bride will be filmed and reviewed for all of your pleasure. And I will be doing a live stream re-chaosifying my shelves. I have not determined a date, but if I have by the time that this video is up, I will put it here. And if not, nothing will appear. Great. Awesome. Cool. All right. Let me know, what did you guys read in May? Have you read any of these books? What do you think about them? Have you read any of the sequels that I haven't gotten to yet? Tell me if I should continue or not. Is it worth it? Especially for Sisters of the Snake and A Touch of Light. Those are my biggest concerns right now. Cool. 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 I'm gonna go now. Check out my Ko-fi page and support me on there if you like this kind of content or any of the content that I put out there in the universe. Cool. And I will see you next time, cuties. Bye. my lunch break, so we're doing this now. All right. But anyways, we can finish. It's just gender flipped. I can't talk. I was reading a book.